Hello, my name is Shelby Gonzalez.
And I'm Gilbert Ryan Gutierrez.
The topic we chose is stem cells and whether or not stem cell research should be permitted. The article covers a yes side as well as a no side. However, before we get started, let's cover some background information.
This debate will cover an introduction to stem cells, basic background information, the yes and no argument, then will lead us to the reflection and a conclusion to wrap everything up. So, what are stem cells? Stem cells are a group of cells that have the ability to change and multiply rapidly into other types of cells.
They can turn into cardiac cells, lung cells, brain cells, and other cells that the human body may need to repair and replenish over time. What is the basic knowledge surrounding stem cells? I'm so glad you asked.
So, the history of stem cells. How did stem cells come to be? Another great question that you asked. Well, the discovery of stem cells occurred in 1991 when a biological study of mouse stem cells led researchers to the discovery. The study led scientists to learn more about how to isolate stem cells from a human embryo in order to grow these cells in a lab.
So, why are stem cells so important? Stem cells are important for the following reasons, including helping humans regenerate specific body parts. They can also create new cells to treat diseases and have the potential to develop into brand new cells or remain stem cells. Stem cells have the potential to heal the body in more ways than we can imagine. However, these are just a few examples. As mentioned previously, embryos are used within the studies. The embryos were created and were initially supposed to be created for infertility purposes through in vitro fertilization procedures. These embryos were no longer needed for the use in vitro fertilization, so these embryos were generously donated to research purposes with the formal consent of the donor.
The future of stem cell research. Within the future, researchers have hypothesized that the stem cells from embryo may be the basis of treating a variety of diseases such as heart disease, diabetes, and even Parkinson's. Scientists still need access for numerous reasons. However, those reasons being what makes them different from specialized cell types. It can help researchers understand how stem cells can help within the future for diseases and medical therapies. Lastly, how can they turn these specialized cells into under, how can they turn into these specialized cells and understand the basic of these cell research?
So, why are they problematic? At the moment, there is no research on human embryos that can be supported by government funding. Although the potential for stem cells has been found to be extremely helpful, there's still a lot of stigma in sharing how it could be detrimental to human life due to various individuals' own moral ethics.
This may be the perfect opportunity to share both sides of the debate to find if embryonic stem cell research should be permitted.
Why indeed it is. I will begin with why embryonic stem cell research should be permitted. Alrighty, so I will be covering the yes argument. So within the article, Professor Jeffrey Hart, a former professor and analyst, argues that a ban on research for embryonic stem cells is an unjustified manner, as there are a variety of benefits to the research of stem cells. So let's cover the myths versus the facts. The no side argues that a single fertilized egg is a developing or potential human being. However, it is not an actual human being quite yet. The no side also argues that they plan on destroying human beings within the embryonic phase with this research method. However, this is already done during in vitro fertilization and even the course of natural fertilization. The goal of the research is not homicide of the organism, but rather to use these specialized cells to eliminate disease and, morally, use these cells in a more productive and positive scope, such as curing the ill and helping where these cells can. It is also stated that stem cell research is murder for embryos. However, researchers are simply taking these embryos that are planned to be destroyed and giving them a new meaning of using them for scientific research. Embryos are not able to be donated if they are not being used with in vitro fertilization. So, why can't we give these stem cells a new meaning to their lives? Stem cells are used in a variety of different ways. As we have mentioned, stem cells have the ability to turn into specialized cells where they are needed, whether it is within our blood cells, brain cells, liver cells, and much more. They can also help cure diseases such as Parkinson's and diabetes. However, without access to research how exactly these cells work to help replenish other cells and cure disease, there is not an exact way to see how it works. There is a major stigma attached to stem cell research and how it could benefit the population. So, this leaves a very important question. How can spreading false information harm the future of stem cell study? There are many false claims about stem cells that have been made, spreading inaccurate information, which can potentially harm the study due to its withholding researchers' ability to study basic stem cell research as well as further their study of this basic stem cell research. It also does not give researchers the ability to study basic cell research prior. The no side indicates that it is possible to create a human embryo, clone it, and then sell the embryo once it is done at the end stages of development. However, this is simply not true. It can't happen within in vitro fertilization, so how can it happen within the study of stem cells? As a note, researchers are not interested in full-grown embryos. This false misconception damages the study of stem cells and creates a false narrative. This creates a narrative that researchers are willing to collect samples to embryos that are almost fully developed, causing them to be unable to finish their development, which is simply not true. When it comes to decision making within the United States, the American Constitution shares that self governing individuals have the right to make decisions for themselves and be allowed to have a choice of what exactly they want. People feel as though single cell organisms, such as embryos, are human beings, but these embryos have never been able to experience American law and do not live under these constitutional rights. As for how it is funded, stem cell research is only funded by private institutions. They cannot be funded by government funding due to the ban by President Bush. Not only is stem cell research seen as wrong from taking stem cells from embryos, but it is also seen as unethical. If these universities have a way to fund this study, then why can it not be paired with a partial government funding as well?
Now that we're on the controversial side of stem cells, this will be the no side of the argument. So, Ramesh Pamnuru is an American conservative thinker as well as a journalist and an editor for the National Review. He writes about his current political issues and provides his own opinions on those debates. He argues about how stem cell research should not be permitted as it is immoral and unethical. He claims the process itself kills the embryonic cells, therefore stopping the possibility of a fetus being born. I want to include here that Ramesh and other supporters of this debate support adult stem cell research, but believe the research of embryonic cells should be banned. So now to truly understand this argument against stem cells, you first need to understand where stem cells come from. Stem cells come from the blastocytes, and they start off with fertilization. So from fertilization, it goes to 2-cell, then 4-cell, 8-cell, morula, and then blastocytes. This takes about 5 to 6 days from fertilization. And the parts of the blastocyst can be described within two parts. So the first part is the main blastocyte itself. It's a ball of cells that form early within the first weeks of pregnancy. Then goes to the inside of it. This will be called the inner cell mass. Clusters of cells that help with the development of the embryo, and the stem cells are also within these walls. Now onto the topic of what makes this whole thing controversial. The process of extracting the stem cells kills the embryo in the process. Once you break into it, there'll be around 300 cells inside, and in about 300 cells, there'll be 150 stem cells within it. They're able to extract the stem cells and then store the cells for later use. They're able to replicate and clone the cells. These are unspecialized cells, meaning they can be utilized for any cells that need replenishing. And they can be used for blood cells, heart cells, and many other types. The options here could be endless. Now on to the morality and ethics of this. Ramesh uses morality and ethics to further his argument on stem cells. Human life begins with the Human life begins when the fertilization happens. Life begins at conception here. The extraction process immediately breaks the blastocyst, which kills it. Stem cells are still not proven to help with any diseases yet and are still experimental, and fetuses should be spared from these experiments as outcomes are not yet certain. The extraction process and the researchers behind it do not understand the weight of their actions when performing them. It's morally and ethically wrong to extract stem cells from human embryos. These lives are born early on, and they end within 5 days. Supporters of this cause understand and know that all lives begins at conception. The unaliving of these children should not be allowed for experimental treatment, and the possible outcome of these treatments are still not yet proven. Ramesh believes that these human babies should be spared from this research and put more effort into finding a more ethical way of harvesting stem cells. Now on to the topic of if stem cells are really alive. Ramesh argues against the claims made by Hart, explaining how these single-cell organisms are alive. Ramesh states, the single-cell human embryos is neither dead nor alive. It's a living organism. These single-cell organisms contain the structures needed to grow life. It is able to split and multiply as it understands the functions that it must carry out. The process begins with one cell, but in the end, it will become a complex system that will be able to carry out life. And are stem cells cost effective for Americans? Insurance will not cover the cost of these procedures, as they're still classified as highly experimental. They are high risk in the eyes of insurance, which means they're more of a liability and they do not want to be covered. These procedures cost around out of pocket $5,000 to $15,000, and some can even cost up to $50,000. Blood cell treatment can cost around $10,000, but the highest reporting one is mesenchymal stem cell therapy, which can cost around $50,000. And the definition of mesenchymal is medicinal signaling cells that differentiate into a variety of cell types. And then the average US salary in 2023 is around 60,000, and Americans couldn't even afford it if they wanted to, which shows how these practices are unfit and out of reach for Americans. But let's take a step back from this and fact check what Ramesh is saying. Reviewing the information, Ramesh's arguing on the topic are factual to a certain extent, but the ideas presented are mostly based on feelings and facts. The are a grouping of cells that have the potential to turn into an embryo. Most scientists would not classify blastocysts as a living organism, since they're just a clumping of cells. And the morality aspect of this argument is that killing a fetus, which is ultimately ending the possibility of life being created. This can be seen as true, but in the eyes of science, these are purely cells, not a living human yet. And the stem cell argument closely follows with the pro-life movement, as the argument being thrown around is whether or not these cells are alive or not, and whether or not these actions are justifiable or murder.
With the information provided, we felt that we supplied an adequate amount of information for viewers to make their own formal decisions. We recognize both sides of the argument as valid. However, between the both of us, we both agreed that the no side lacked factual evidence and based their debate off of morality and personal ethics. The yes side was able to provide more research-based evidence for their debate, which gave them a strong footing when conducting this persuasive argument.
And for the conclusion, the research for this is still advancing, and the study for stem cells can be more reachable within the future. The discussion on whether or not stem cell research should be permitted is still a very large and controversial topic. But in the end, we provided the necessary information and facts so other individuals can make their own conclusion and work with their own knowledge to learn what is right for them.
Thank you so much for watching our video. If you have any more questions, feel free to watch the provided YouTube links down below to further your knowledge. Thank you so much.